Welcome everyone who's joining us. We'll get started in a couple of minutes.
Tara, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks.
Hi, Guillermo. So welcome everyone for the final episode of the Essential Skills webinars. I'd like to welcome back everyone who has participated in the earlier 3 webinars. So this is the 4th webinar. We've had 1 per month starting in June. And so for those of you who have attended all 4, congratulations. We're really excited that you're going to be able to receive that final certification. So we'll be sending that out in the next couple of weeks. Also, I'd love to extend a welcome to our 9 registered participants who are actually also enrolled in our mentorship program. And that's really exciting because these webinars actually came out of an idea from a mentee and a mentor about skills that they would really love to work on further through the mentorship program. So we're excited to have them here today. And then a special welcome to the CEO and President of SFI PLT Canada, Kathy, who we will hear from shortly. So just a few logistics. Because we have almost 200 people registered for the webinar today, we have put everybody on mute, but there are still some ways for you to engage. So throughout the webinar, if you have a specific question that you need immediate attention, please put that in the chat and we'll have somebody monitoring that and we'll be able to help you out. If you have a question about the actual interview topic, please put that question in the question and answer or the Q&A at the bottom. And we will put aside some time at the end and address all of those questions. And if at any point you just would like to be unmuted for whatever reason, if you just raise your hand, we will be able to help manage that. This session is being recorded so that we are able to put it onto the web or to our website and be able to share it with other learners that are not available for the live session. And for yourselves as well, if you ever want to revisit anything, you're welcome to do so. And so we'll start off with a poll. And we've done this each time, but essentially this poll is just to help us better understand who we have in attendance so that we are able to ensure that our products and services are best suited to our audience. So if you can just click on everything that applies, that's really great.
We'll give it 5 more seconds. Okay, poll is closing.
Great, thanks so much. And I'm going to pass it over to Maria for a short land acknowledgement.
Thanks, Tara. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. I want to acknowledge that PLT Canada's office is located within the unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. I would also like to acknowledge that we are joined by folks from across Canada that are each in their own territory of Indigenous peoples of Canada. I encourage you to check out the resource in the chat box that I'm about to put, where you can find more information on Indigenous territories and languages. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. So PLT Canada is committed to using the outdoors to engage youth in learning about the world around them and advancing environmental and forest literacy, stewardship, and career pathways using trees and forests as the windows on the world. All of you are here because you are interested in pursuing that green career pathway, assumably. So before we get started on the interviews, I just wanted to take a few minutes and just share a few more of the programs and services that PLT Canada has to support youth in their green career pathway. And so the first is that at PLT Canada, we have placed more than 3,000 green job youth since 2018. Some of our achievements that we're really proud of is that we have achieved gender balance in those job placements every year. We've also been able to help 500 Indigenous youth from more than 80 Indigenous nations to find those green jobs and support 200 employers. In addition, as I was mentioning earlier, we have a mentorship program that we launched earlier this year called My Green Mentor. Oh, can you just, thank you. And so we are launching our second cohort early next year, and registration is open. I know many of you have already taken the opportunity to register, and I'm excited to see those names go from both this webinar registration list to there. This mentorship program is engaging youth 18 to 30 and pairing them with professionals in the forest and conservation sector. So I do really encourage you to participate if you are interested in expanding your network or getting clarity or overcoming barriers entering into the workforce, or if you just want to develop some leadership and some more understanding of how to advance your career beyond that initial job. Next slide. PLT Canada also continues to expand our programming. Some of the things that we are offering to diverse youth are some community skills training fund. This is really exciting because this gives Indigenous youth an opportunity within their community to target some skills that are really relevant to advancing careers within that localized community. I'm not going to talk very much about any of these, but I just wanted to make you aware. So if you're interested in any of them, please reach out to either Maria or myself at PLT Canada, and we're happy to give you more information. We're also able to support youth-facing barriers with equipment. So if you needed a pair of boots to take on a green job, that's something we can help with. We continue to develop webinars such as this one for both youth and employers to help engage skills, as well as to help make sure that the workplace is a diverse and accepting place for you to be. We also are excited to be able to offer scholarships to various conferences and events to help advance career success, such as the SFI conference that is upcoming in October. Next slide. We have some scholarships to offer to youth. And so if you are interested in that SFI conference, which will be a really great place to network and to be really aware of some of the oh, can you go back one? To be really enlightened as some of the really important issues and advancements in the forest and conservation sector. This is a really great opportunity. It is a single-day conference, and if you'd like some more information, check out the website.
Well, and if I could just add on that, it is free for PLT Canada youth, because there is a cost there, and so there's a specific code when you register, and Maria might have it handy. If not, I do, and I can get it before the end of the session and put it in the chat box. That enables you to register for free if you're under 30. So just wanted to point that out.
Thanks,
and we should give the registration link as well in the chat box, Maria. Awesome.
Okay, next slide. And then the last exciting resource that I just wanted to share as we talk about green career pathways is a really beautiful publication that PLT Canada has put together and is available on our website that looks at green career pathways and green careers across the country through the lens of Indigenous peoples. So it highlights 12 professionals from the sector from across Canada, and it elevates some of their, the way that they got to their career and some of their advice for youth and what they have to say about what they're excited about within their career. So this is a really great publication if you're interested in just exploring careers through different perspectives. Okay, so we'll get started, but as I said, if you have questions, please reach out to Maria or myself. So today we are together to talk about acing that green job interview. Today we have with us Kathy Abuso, which is a really exciting guest to have. She is the CEO of SFI and PLT Canada, And Kathy's passionate to help all youth see the opportunities that are available in the diverse forest and conservation sector. And she's engaged to support career pathway development through green jobs, mentorship, and with her work within the bigger SFI network. Kathy is a champion for inclusion and strives to make the world more sustainable in the work she's doing. She has her own TED Talk. She's won countless awards and is known on the global stage. And we're pretty honored to have her today. We also have Sarah Casorso, and she's from Eco Canada. She has her BA from the University of British Columbia, her certificate in HR management for the University of Calgary, and she manages Eco's HR and administration department. She has over 10 years experience working in HR and recruiting for environmental organizations. So I'm now passing it over to Sarah.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be back with everybody today for our last series in this webinar group. So Eco Canada has been partnering with Project Learning Tree Canada to bring you this series of 4 webinars, and they're really designed to help you develop the tools and techniques that will assist you in performing an effective job search in the Canadian green job sector. So the first 3 webinars really focus on how to write the perfect resume, how to maximize your job search, how to become an expert networker to tap into the hidden job market. And then today, being the last webinar in the series, we're going to cover how to make a great impression in your green job interview. So the whole series of 4 webinars, including today, are being recorded and are available on the PLT website. And so I know that securing an interview for your green job can seem like, you know, it's the end game, but as a job seeker, there is still a lot of work to do to make sure that you ace your interview and walk away with a new role that you love. So throughout today's webinar, I'll be sharing my tips to make sure that your interview is a success. Before we jump in, the intended learning outcomes for today's webinar are, know that you'll know more about preparing for your interview, the types of interviews, tips to obviously ace those interviews, and then what to do following interviews. And then also, as Tara mentioned, we're also very lucky to be hearing some tips from PLT Canada's President and CEO, Kathy Abuso. We'll also be providing you with some resources at the end that will help you prepare. So we've got a poll, and if you've been along the ride for all of these webinars, you'll know that we like our polls. So we're just looking to test your knowledge about the interview process. So on average, a corporate job attracts over 250 resumes. So of that, how many candidates do you think will actually make it through to the interview round? And you can just select your option here, the multiple choice, and we'll give you about 20 seconds or so to do that. All right, let's see what everybody, 2% is the majority there. Yeah, that's definitely what the research shows. So it's about 2% are called in for an interview. So that's around 4 to 6 people. So if you're lucky enough to land an interview, you need to make sure that you're making the most of that opportunity to show the hiring manager why they should be hiring you. So again, we're excited to hand over this part of the presentation to Kathy Abuso, the CEO and President of PLT Canada. This is a really special opportunity for everyone online today, as it's not every day that you get to hear directly from a CEO. So let's welcome Kathy.
Well, thank you, Sarah and Tara and Maria for pulling these series together. And thank you to all of the participants, great numbers and turnout for coming out. So the question in front of me is, what gets you interested in an applicant? And I'm going to provide a few C words and run through them. So one is clarity, another is confidence, another is care, another is connections, another is culture, and the final one is curiosity. And so those are a lot of C words, but and it's funny, I've never thought of it in those terms, but just stepping back and thinking about it, they all happen to be C words, which was amazing to me in preparation for today. So clarity is really about clarity of thought. Are you able to communicate clearly? Are you able to clarify why you're interested in the position. Does your CV, even to get you to this stage, speak clearly on top about your interests? I was a mentor for a wonderful young bioengineer, a young woman, and it wasn't until I spoke to her after having seen her CV and her LinkedIn that I understood she was interested in food security. You would never have known that by looking at her CV. And so it's important to be very clear about where your interests are and why you're interested in the job. Confidence is important, and I know that's a tough one because you know, when you're in an interview, it's sometimes the most vulnerable state you may feel that you're in, and yet to demonstrate confidence in the job is important, and in yourself is most important. And it's important to understand, though, that when we write a job description at SFI or at Project Learning Tree Canada, we never, ever, ever expect that any one individual is going to have all of the skills and the expertise and the competencies that we put on the job description. But we want to have it broad enough to ensure that we're not missing great candidates. So don't feel a lack of confidence just because you don't think that you can do all of those things. Good jobs have training on the jobs. And it's also great in part of your confidence to say, you know, I can really nail these things and I feel great about this. I feel like I have loads of experience, but here's some things that, you know, I will need training on. I love it when people point out that they're not perfect. That is still part of confidence, to say what you're good at and where you're going to need some help, or to provide, again, that clarity in terms of your candidacy, because honesty is what we're looking for there, and because then we can also support you. In terms of care, I mean, another word for care is, you know, caring about the world, caring about your colleagues, caring about the job, caring about the planet. And so care or passion are things that I look for. I look for, you know, is this I want to see some personality. I want to know that they care about this position, that they care about things in general, because it's just, I mean, it's just so important that there's humanity in the individual, and that people are comfortable enough, and I guess comfort's another C word, look at that, comfortable enough to demonstrate their own personality and their own care about issues and their own passion about issues. Under connections, that's a broad topic, and I know you even had a theme on connections, but for me, to demonstrate connections comes in all sorts of different ways. Are you making connections in the interview to your own experiences? Are you making connections to, in our instance, the Project Learning Tree Canada website or the SFI website? Have you taken the time to review things to prepare for the interview that you can demonstrate and make connections to our work beyond what is written in the job description that you received? So I love it when people will say to me, hey, I know there's 4 pillars of your work at SFI: standards, conservation, education, and community. Because right away, I know they've done some homework, that they've taken the time to review things and make connections in their interview. Or you can, you know, make connections to content that's relevant as well. And then even talking about your connections in terms of this job overall. And again, those experiences that you've had and how they're relevant here. So making those connections to the interview process, to the organization, to the organization's mission or vision is really, really important. And then culture fit is super important. And like, is the individual collaborative? Are they a team player? Do they seem creative? Are they curious? These are all important parts of our culture. And so it's also fine just to ask about culture. But those are some of the things that you'll see that get me really interested in an applicant. And you'll notice that I didn't say skills. And I think that's important to understand. Of course, there has to be a skill set there that's for the job, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for all of these other aspects in terms of who you are, how you present, the confidence you have, the care, the collaboration, the homework you've done, the connections you've done. So all of these things, the clarity of your interest, these are all things that you can deliver on, and that can really set you up for success in an interview. I think they've got one more slide here, which I guess is my last point in more depth, which is curiosity. The question is, what is one thing you think all people should do in an interview when asked if they have any questions? I love that question, because at the end of every interview, if it hasn't already happened through the natural course of the interview, I will ask the candidate, do you have any questions? And I have to say, if they don't have one question, it sends them to the bottom of the list. That may seem harsh, but it goes back to all of those other things I was talking about. I want to see curiosity. I want to see people making connections. I want to see that they're confident enough to ask a question. And I want to know that they're capable of learning, because that's what questions do for you. I never expect anyone to have all these skills and all this knowledge, but by asking a question, it demonstrates that you're going to be able to function in this job, because you're going to be able to ask clarifying questions and learn. And that takes confidence. That's a hard thing. So, and there's many questions that you can obviously listen to the interview, and as a result, you can ask questions during the interview, or you can save them for the end of the interview. But the questions you ask can be small, or they can be big. I mean, they can be small in terms of like, when will I hear back? Like these sorts of technical questions. And that's fine. Do ask some of those clarifying ones so you know what the answers are to the things on your mind. But don't forget some of the big issue questions, again, that show you're a creative thinker, that you're making connections. So, you know, ask the interviewee, what does success look like for me in this position? What are your expectations? What's your vision for this organization in 5 years from now? Or back to the other one, what's your culture of your organization? These are all things that are really good questions, because they're setting out expectations for yourself. They're letting you know the type of organization you're heading into, because you know what, you might not even want the job once you ask those questions. And that's important. An interview is as much for you as it is for someone, as for the person conducting the interview. It has to be a two-way street. And until you start to ask the questions that you're curious about and hear the answers, you might be like, uncertain, and the answers to those questions are going to make you super excited about the job or super worried about the job. And I think that's what you're hoping to get from those questions, is to understand, is this a good fit for me? But you should never, you know, fear a job just because you don't have all the skills. Back to that, skills can be learned on the job. You shouldn't not apply to something because you don't have all the skills, but try to emphasize what you do have during the interview, and acknowledge where you're still so excited to be learning, and put those things that you don't have in a positive light about continued learning and growth opportunities. So those are just some of the things that I look for, and hope that was helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. Sorry, I was just unmuting myself there. I really liked what you said about it's a two-way street, because that's something that I always say when I'm interviewing candidates, is that it's as much us interviewing you as it is you interviewing us. And you should have some confidence in the power that you also have in the situation, right? And oftentimes, if I was in somebody else's shoes in the interview, I'll be just as nervous as that person. So it's just some context, and I think it's important to remember that you've got some power, and in that you should get some confidence as well. So we're going to, you know, you put in all the work to get your resume and your cover letter done. It's impressed the hiring manager, so you think you're done, right? But there's still work to be done. So the interview is a really crucial part of your job search. It's your chance to have face-to-face time with the hiring manager and really be able to show them why you're the best person for the job, and you know, to explain anything or demonstrate the culture fit through the interview process, because that's hard to get off a resume. And obviously job interviews are scary and they're nerve-wracking, and it can feel like there's a lot riding on them, but try not to stress. We're going to be going over a lot of tips today to help you prepare and really succeed at those interviews. So one of the, easiest things within your control to do to prepare is making a clear plan for the day. So things like, finding out when and where the interview is being held, finding your route for the day, how to get there. I've had candidates that will actually sort of chart out where they're going the night before, just so that they don't have to stress in the morning about that. Or if you're driving, you would want to find where the parking might be, or if you're taking transit, you would, just make sure that you've got the train times or bus schedules and that kind of thing, so that you're not late. Another part of planning would be to contact your references before the interview. Oftentimes you'll be at the interview and you'll be asked for your references, so you should have that list ready, and your references should know that they might be called upon. Often I've called references and people haven't really given their permission to be contacted. So it's really important that you get this step done ahead of time and not after the fact you're scrambling to provide something to somebody. And then another way to plan is to decide what you're going to wear for the day and get ready, and you won't have a last minute wardrobe crisis. Maybe have a backup just in case you spill coffee, which I think is a common thing that can happen to all of us early in the morning when you're stressing out. And also, again, sometimes people ask how they should dress, and I always say to dress one step above what the office is wearing or the job that you're applying for. You're almost going to never be penalized for being overdressed, so it's important to present yourself professionally. And then you're going to want to make sure that you've done your research about the company. So we've talked about this before in previous webinars, but it's always a really good idea to be able to demonstrate what you know about the employer and have those questions, again, like Kathy mentioned, that you want to ask for clarification, because you're not going to get everything off a website. And then again, like Kathy mentioned, to prepare some answers, prepare some questions that you want to ask at the end of the interview, and then also prepare some questions for yourself that you can, practice on. And so we will cover that in a few slides down. So again, we've all kind of said how interviews can be a little bit scary and lots of pressure to perform on the day, but it's normal to have anxiety in these situations. But one of the things that I encourage candidates to do is to have a practice interview. So a practice interview is really a tool to help you build your confidence, again, that Kathy was speaking about, and work on specific aspects of your interview techniques. So it's a great way to also get feedback from someone that you trust. Things that you would want to consider is, what do you need to work on? So is it that elevator pitch that we've talked about in previous webinars? Or is it answers to the behavioral questions that you're probably going to get asked? You just want to practice with a clear focus. And so then another way to prepare is to make a list of the questions or topics that you've struggled with in the past. So I often say, to friends that are asking for advice for interviews, that you're going to get asked certain types of questions. You might not know the exact question, but you're probably going to get asked something about your strengths and your weaknesses, or a time you've overcome an obstacle, or a time you've worked with a difficult coworker, or a time where you've really shown initiative. This is a great way to sort of list out examples that you can draw upon, and then you can tweak them to whatever the question is on that day. And just remember to do your practice interview in the same format that the real interview is going to be in. So you would want to recreate the settings for the day. If it's going to be virtual, you would connect with your friend or your peer through Skype or Messenger or whatever that may be. But the whole point of this process is just to get some honest and constructive feedback, and just be open and take notes and go away from the experience with some areas to work on. And this will really help you boost your confidence and make you feel more prepared for the interview itself. So there's a few different types of interviews that you might be invited to. So we're going to look at what we're considering to be the most common. So phone interviews, the video interview, face-to-face, and then group interviews. So again, when you get the invitation to attend an interview, make sure you you find out the information, like how this interview will be conducted and who you'll be meeting with. So it's important to know that you might be asked to have more than one interview as part of the process. So you could have a phone pre-screen and then a face-to-face interview, or a group interview and then a face-to-face. So it's just important to, when you're in communication with the recruiter or the hiring manager, that you get the details so that you can prepare accordingly. So we've got another poll here, and we're just, for curiosity's sake, looking to see what kinds of interviews you've participated in. So I think you can select all that apply, and it's really just for curiosity's sake. So we'll do the sort of 20-second time frame to see what everybody's done. Probably can close it. So yeah, everybody's done, looks like a little bit of everything, which is really interesting. I wasn't sure about the group interview. To be perfectly honest, I've never participated in one as a candidate or as a recruiter. So I was just wondering how common those were. So that's interesting that 41% happen. All right, so we're gonna look at the phone interview first. They are commonly used as like the initial part of a hiring process to screen applicants usually. So I've actually conducted 3 of them this morning. And so one thing you should do to prepare for a phone interview is you would prepare similarly as you would for an in-person. You would want to make sure that you've got a copy of your application, so the resume and the cover letter that you use. Hopefully you've saved those along with the job posting for reference. Sometimes when a job posting is at the interview process, it'll be closed, so it will be very hard to reference that through the company website. And it doesn't look too great upon yourself if you are sending a message to the recruiter asking for a copy of the job posting. So tip from previous webinars is to save those things, and it just makes your life easier. And then, a few things about just make sure you're in a quiet area with no distractions, make sure you have good reception, and then simple tips, but, make sure you answer the phone, keep a glass of water handy. I've learned this the hard way, so make sure you have it, because if you're talking a lot, sometimes your throat will tickle and you need the water. And then make sure you're listening really carefully, and it's perfectly fine to ask for clarification or ask for somebody to repeat themselves. And then you're going to want to take some notes, because that will inform some of the follow-up that you do, or it'll help you ask some questions, those clarifying questions. So you can also come or be prepared to ask some of those questions to the interviewer. You also want to make sure that you're speaking clearly and slowly. Sometimes we can be fast talkers, so it's important to, speak clearly, watch your tone of voice. Because you can't see somebody on the phone, it's very hard sometimes to know how you're being received. And so even things like smiling, it doesn't necessarily, like, they don't know you're smiling, but it can change the tone in your voice, and just you'll come across much more engaged. So we're going to now do the video interviews. So these are very common nowadays, given COVID-19. And at ECO right now, at ECO Canada, we're only interviewing over we use Teams. So I think right now a lot of people are very comfortable using Skype and different video chats, but there are also some tips that will help you give your best impression during that interview. So I've said it previously, but dress appropriately. So you would be planning out your outfit, and you would want to make sure that it would be the same thing that you would wear to an in-person interview. Just because you're conducting it from your home doesn't mean that you should be sitting there in your pajamas or whatever it may be. You should be dressing for the role that you want. So make sure you look smart and professional. And then another tip is you're going to want to raise your computer or whatever device it is that you're using to make sure that it's eye level, so that you're not looking down or to the side or whatever. It just makes sure it just is a better way to communicate over the phone and make, or sorry, over the video, and just makes it a little bit more realistic. If you're going to stand, that's fine. You just would want to adjust it as well. And then you're going to want to also check your background to make sure that it's not distracting. So if you have a really busy background behind you, that can be a distraction. So if you don't have like a blank wall, you can do these, you can't see me raise my hand, but you can do these screens behind you so that it blurs out anything that might be a little too busy. Again, you're going to want to make sure that you're in a quiet area and you're not going to be interrupted. So you're going to silence your phone, maybe put your kids in front of a cartoon, the dog's outside, that kind of thing. You don't want to be disrupted. People aren't going to hold that to you like right now, but it's just something you don't want to worry about or stress upon. And then another thing that you're going to want to think about is to look at the camera and not the screen, because it's just a way, again, to sort of mimic an in-person interview, and it's just a way to connect more with the interviewer. It shows confidence as well. So the biggest thing too is to also test your connection to make sure that it works prior to the interview, or have a backup plan. So for instance, last week I was doing an internal webinar and my internet was fine all day until that time. Luckily, I had a coworker that had the script and all that, and I could just default to her. But in an interview, you can't really do that. So one of the things that I would suggest is to have the phone number handy of whoever you're doing the interview with, so that if for whatever reason you lose connection or they lose connection, that you can follow up on the phone and you're not stressing out about the whole thing. So then the face-to-face or the in-person interview is what everybody is most familiar with, and they usually occur after a successful phone interview or some sort of screening process. There's usually more than one person, so usually you'll have like the hiring manager and the HR representative. There can be other people present too. Sometimes a team member will come if it's a small team and they're really concerned about fit and how everybody's going to get along. So the tips to prepare for a face-to-face interview are very similar to the other tips. Obviously, you're going to want to research the company and the industry, practice the interview questions. You're going to want to get your references ready. I also encourage everybody to bring copies of your resume and bring spares. It's almost 100% certain that they will have a copy of your resume, but if somebody else has joined impromptu, then you will have one to give them, and it just makes you look really prepared. And then you're going to want to make sure that you're on time, but not too early and not too late. And this is like one of those things where it's like, well, I can't win if I'm early and I can't win if I'm on time or whatever it is. I suggest 10 minutes. Get there 10 minutes beforehand. Also too, if you are super early, like you've got 30 minutes, hang out in the lobby or go for a walk. Oftentimes, if somebody comes that early, that like so much earlier than the scheduled time, it will throw off the hiring manager. They might be rushing through something, or it's just a situation that I would encourage everybody to avoid. So just showing up 10 minutes early is perfect. And then obviously don't arrive late. If you are going to be late for something outside of your control, like an accident or something like that, communicate. So you'll have their phone number to let them know. And then first impressions count. So make sure, right now we're not doing handshakes or that kind of thing, but you are going to want to make sure that you're making eye contact. You're going to want to make sure that you're paying attention to your posture and your body language. These are all things that sort of inform a first impression. So then we're going to talk about the group interviews, which I was surprised about the amount of the attendees today that have participated, but you know, they clearly are common. So you never know when you might be called to do a group interview. So they're really designed to test the candidates in a social situation while being under pressure. So again, my advice for these types of interviews is the same as what I've said for the other types, but other things that you should be considering is trying to answer like all the questions. So they're going to be looking at which candidates are confident and which ones are participating. So you don't want to be the quiet one in this certain situation. You're going to want to make sure that you're really highlighting your skills and what makes you the perfect candidate for this position. And then again, it's really important, like Kathy said, to have some questions to ask. So they're going to want to see, the group interviewers are going to want to see who's motivated, who's engaged, and asking questions is a really great way to stand out and be remembered. And then another thing to keep in mind is that you should be including everyone in the room. So despite them being your competition, you should still be addressing them, and it really demonstrates leadership, communication, and collaboration skills. So there are a lot of different types of questions that employers or us recruiters could ask you in an interview. So we're just going to group these types of questions into 3 categories so that you can help you prepare. So they're open-ended, which would be questions that do not have a definitive answer. So, you know, why do you want to work here would be one. So basically think of it as anything that you couldn't say yes or no to. Then behavioral questions, which are my favorite. They are focusing on your past performance. So it's a way to tell the interviewer about your skills and abilities. And the theory behind this is that past behavior is a predictor of future behavior. So it's a way for somebody to evaluate how you might fit into an organization. And so an example of this would be, you know, give me an example of a time you did some cost-effective improvement or something along those lines. And then situational questions are when employers ask, you know, they present you with a scenario or a problem that requires a solution. And so these are usually related directly to the work that you would be doing. And they really help the employer understand your thought process and your problem solving skills. And so again, this is an opportunity for you to highlight your experience and skills. So a question of a situational question might be, what would you do if you were asked to perform a task that you've never done before? So before moving on to some examples of different types of questions and how you might answer them, I wanted just to talk about an important technique to help structure your answers. It's called the STAR technique. So the STAR technique can really help you prepare for your interview and develop clear and concise responses and highlight your real life examples. And you can use this technique to answer both situational and behavioral questions. And it just really helps to ensure that you're fully answering the questions by including all the relevant information. So the STAR method helps you to create an easy to follow story with a clear problem and an outcome. The S stands for situation. So this is where you're providing the context. So what the situation was, the challenge, the situation you were in. The T is for task. So this is where you would be telling somebody about your role and responsibility in regard to the challenge you're outlining. And you want to make sure that you're specific and that you're having it relate to you. So you're not talking about we as a group. It's like it was your role in that. The A is for action. So this is what you did to overcome the challenge or problem. And again, you want to be very specific and talk about what you did as opposed to what the team or the group did. You want to really focus on your efforts. And then the R is the result. So what was the outcome that you reached through these actions? And if possible, you want to be able to quantify your success or provide concrete examples of your efforts. So another piece that I would add in here as well is this is your opportunity to say what the lessons were that you learned too. So this is the situation, this was my role in it, this is what I did, here's the result, and here's my key learning. That will really be a well-rounded answer to whatever the question was that was being asked of you. Okay, so we'll quickly run through some examples of the 3 types of questions that we just discussed. And an open-ended question would be, how would you describe yourself? So because it's open-ended, there's no right or wrong answer here. And basically the interviewer is just trying to find out a little bit more about you. And this could allow you to really show your ability to evaluate yourself and demonstrate some of your strongest skill set. And this is where you would describe your most positive attributes and how it would apply in the workplace. So it's more than just saying like you're a good team player or whatever it is. You want to really use examples and explain what this means to you and how it relates to the role that you're applying for. And then a behavioral question. So this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, where there's always some form or another of the same question. So tell me about a time when you made a mistake. What did you do to correct it? Again, it's very key that you have to use a past example. It's not a situational question. It's asking what you did in the past. And so this is acknowledging that everybody makes mistakes. Nobody is expecting anybody to be perfect, but as an interviewer, I'm trying to understand how you handled the situation. So you would really bring in that STAR technique to structure your answer. And a great response to this question would be to take on, to take responsibility for the mistake, own up to it, and then demonstrate how you mitigated any impacts and show what you learned from the experience. So from this example on the screen here, you can see that this person took responsibility by talking to their manager. It shows that they're not afraid to ask for help when they need it. And then they show how they mitigated this through their communication with the customer and what they learned in order to make sure that it didn't happen again. And so this really demonstrates some excellent behaviors that recruiters and hiring managers are looking for. And then the final example for a situational question is where, again, where an employer is asking you to take a specific situation and how you would handle it. So what would you do if an angry and dissatisfied customer confronted you? So how would you resolve their concern? So they're trying to understand, again, your problem-solving skills and your communication skills. And so you would use your response to share your ability to be empathetic and then address any unexpected challenges. So in this example that we're showing, the respondent is emphasizing with the customer, and they are providing a specific example of what they said. They also demonstrated that they have a great customer focus. They're managing the expectations of the complainant, and then they're also showing how they resolved the situation and clarifying what was happening. So the hiring manager would be able to see from this response that the applicant understood what good customer service looked like and also the conflict resolution skills. So we've looked at some questions and then I've also got some common interview mistakes that candidates can make. So these are things that you just want to take note of to make sure that you aren't doing them, so that you do make a good impression. Again, it's the dressing inappropriately. So make sure you're dressing smart and professional, and overdressing, again, is better than underdressing. Arriving late, so we talked about this again earlier. It's disrespectful, and it also can make you look like you have poor time management. So make sure you've planned the route out, or if something has happened that's outside of your control, make sure you communicate it as soon as possible. Another one that doesn't happen so often, but it has happened in my experience, is using your phone. So make sure it's turned off, that it's on silent. You can hear the vibrate too, so I really encourage everybody to turn it off. If for some reason you're expecting an emergency call, let the interviewer know, right? We're all human, but if you don't communicate these things, it just reflects poorly on you. And then not doing your research. So we interviewers can always tell if you've done your research. So you will really want to make sure that you aren't caught, you know, without that knowledge. This actually happens a lot nowadays. There's a lot of people that I interview that haven't done their research. So you can stand out just by doing this alone sometimes. So make sure you've gone over the website, you've checked the news. Like, there's all sorts of ways that you can find information on the organization that you're hiring for. And then don't lie on your resume. So if you haven't been truthful, it could come up in the interview, could come up in your background checks. It's just not worth the risk. So always be honest. And then another thing to avoid is talking too much while you're providing. You want to have detailed answers. You don't want to go on a tangent or a rant or whatever that is. So you don't want to involve too many personal details either in your answers. And then finally, one thing to be mindful of is no matter why you're leaving your current role or why you left your last role, whatever that may be, do not speak negatively about past employers. It's really unprofessional, and even if it's totally valid, it does not reflect well on you. So I just don't do that. And then my final tip, and I think I've said this in probably some shape or another for all the different webinar series that we've done over the last few months, is to follow up. So if you've had the interview, you're going to want to follow up within 24 hours. So you address it to the person that interviewed you directly. If for whatever reason you don't have their contact information, you could send it to whoever it was that you did connect with initially and ask them to forward it on. Make sure you've proofread it and all of those things, but it's really important. And again, I've said it before, but this is a lost art. So doing this makes you stand out as well. And I can say personally for my team and who I've hired, everybody that I've hired for my team has sent a thank you note, because it just demonstrates the kind of candidates that I want, the same values and way of conducting oneself. So that's it for this webinar today. We are going to be following up with resources like we have in the past. So we're going to have a couple different cheat sheets and a checklist, and then linking you to the other job or the webinars that we've done in this series. And then I think we will open it up for questions.
Great, thanks so much, Sarah. So I think Kathy did a great job actually of answering some of the question and answers in the chat box. And so I actually was just going to read through them quickly just to make sure everyone saw them. One person asked how to develop job confidence in youth. And Kathy suggested work with them on being aware of the things that they're strong at and reminding them of all the positive things they have accomplished. And you can do this for yourself too. Just review your resume and highlight for yourself what things you're really proud that you've accomplished. Another question said, you never expect that a candidate fulfills all the job requirements. Nevertheless, when organizations reject a candidate, 90% mention that you don't fulfill their requirements, or even worse, that you are overqualified. Do you think there's a lack of expertise in HR departments? And Kathy said, great point. Not fulfilling the requirements can be skills or not skills related. If you are overqualified, you should be able to communicate that you hope that they would see that as an asset to have a knowledgeable contributor to the team. But if an organization doesn't value your qualifications, you probably don't want to work for them anyway, to be honestly. How can youth develop soft skills? Kathy suggested to practice, do some practice interviewing with others, just as Sarah also emphasized. What do you think about the job description that wants different education, diploma versus degree? Kathy said, we always include degrees or diplomas that we are looking for, so that's fine, as sometimes expertise is required. But it is still fine to apply if you don't have that degree, if you're prepared to speak to the relevancy of your life experience in that area of work. And I know Sarah has actually emphasized this in other webinars as well, to utilize that cover letter to really showcase your skills. For example, I'm not a professional forester, and yet I'm the CEO of SFI. I'm sure the job description said they were looking for a forester, and that is a logical starting point to look for the right people, but organizations are normally open-minded if you are clear about other relevant skills you have. Guillermo, he told a story that was quite unfortunate about how he was asked really rude questions like, does he speak Mexican? And there was a statement about his sexuality, about getting a job in the fashion industry. And Kathy just suggested, like, again, it's not necessarily an organization you want to work for anyhow. You could say back to them that you're not sure how this is relevant, or ask them why they would say that, or why they would have that question or statement. Something that Sarah didn't cover, but you could look into, is there are actually illegal, excuse me, illegal questions for an employer to ask in an interview. And you are in your frame of mind and in your right to not answer certain questions if it's related to sex, gender, equity, any of those typical human rights qualifications. You don't have to answer a question about it. Okay, so now to you, Sarah. What is the first thing HR looks at from the resume? What first thing interviewers look at the time of in-person, video, or group interview?
What is the first thing that I look at on a resume and then also in the interview?
Yeah.
Okay. So on a resume, I'll first look at like probably their most recent work experience, and I'll see how relevant it is. I'll also be looking at just the format that it's in. Like, is it easy to read? Is it easy to find the information that I'm looking for? For instance, today I was looking at a resume that I had to go like 3 pages down before I found where they had been working. It was they had all their skills and all that kind of thing at the first 2 pages. So I like to find that kind of information first. So I've always sort of, and I believe we did when we're talking about resumes, you know, having a brief box of your skills and qualifications, and then going into your work experience and your education and that kind of thing. The first thing that I look for in an interview, in person, I guess it's just body language and like energy. And oftentimes, and our reception is the first person, or is the first people to sort of evaluate the candidate, because they'll be waiting in the waiting room for me, and they often see a lot of things too, like, oh, this person was really chatty, or this person like didn't make eye contact. Like, there's just little things like that that are you know, first impression makers. So just coming in confident, friendly, energized, not bouncing off the walls, but just, you know, engaged and motivated to be there is kind of the first thing that I would look for. And you can do that through video as well, right? And it's just not like being professional, but also being casual, right? Showing that you have some personality, I think, is important.
Right. Is it a good idea to use the phrase, "it depends," on situational questions for the interview?
I don't think like I would frown upon that, but it's almost like everybody says that, right? It's like the easy default to go to. So if somebody's asking you the question and you would normally say it depends, well, you could say, you know, based on what I do know about what you're asking, I'm taking into consideration that these are sort of the factors at play. So this is how I would probably act in this particular situation. And if they're not meaning that, they'll tell you. They'll say, oh, no, I meant like if it was actually like this. And so I think there's just one way to sort of show confidence in your answer without sort of being like, well, I don't know what I would do, probably this.
So take a stance. Okay. How do you learn more about the company culture? And would you recommend a student to apply to a company whose culture you do not feel very comfortable with?
Well, if you're not comfortable with the culture, do not apply for the job. At the end of the day, people leave organizations typically because of culture and because of managers. That's what the statistics out there say. And so you don't want to be part of that. Oftentimes you'll know in the interview what the culture is like just based on the questions that they ask, or how, if you have like multiple people in the interview, how do they chat to each other? there's all sorts of things that you can do as a candidate to sort of evaluate that. But then you can look on the website too, and on social media, like, are they taking part in social events or corporate responsibility events, like things that are important to you, you can find through social media or on their website. And so if you know that perhaps something that they're, or corporate community challenges, like at ECO, we have a lot of active bikers and stuff like that, mountain climbers, all these types of people, right? And so somebody might be able to do their research and find out that those are the kind of people that work at ECO. They might have some friends there, so like there's a way to connect that way. So I would just encourage everybody to, you know, look at the websites, look at social media. You can even check, you know, different people that work at the organization through LinkedIn and just kind of see what everybody's about and get your read that way. But don't apply for any job, or don't continue to be in the process if you're not comfortable. You can very politely withdraw your application.
Yeah, and some companies actually have statements. Like I know SFI and PLT Canada, if you go into About Us, there's a culture statement. And so those might not get into the details, but it'll certainly give you a sense of what they believe in and what they strive for. Would you ever recommend if you had a brief connection, reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn and actually asking them about what it's like to work for this organization, just as part of your homework?
Yeah, for sure. Like I would reach out and say, hey, I actually got an interview scheduled. I'd like to learn a little bit more about the company. Would you be free to connect over the phone and just kind of get some more information that way?
Great. How long would an interview usually reply back to the candidate if they successfully got the job? If the follow-up email was sent and after a few weeks interview still didn't reply back, do you assume you didn't get it?
Yeah, I mean, it's best practice, and it's something that we do at ECO, is to let everybody know, no matter what the outcome is, in a timely manner. If you don't hear back within like a week, or say you like, make sure that you've asked, because sometimes people are on vacation, or sometimes there's going to be this huge project that's due. So there could be something external to your situation, your interview, that is going to play a role in the timing. But if you knew all that and you were expecting to know and you haven't found out, you could send an email and say, oh, I was just wondering, like you said, I might know about this time. Could you let me know if there's any update? Or sometimes, if you've not heard anything, it could be because they've reached out to somebody else. Somebody else has the offer in front of them, and they have, 5 days to consider it, and you might be second in line. So that's maybe why they're not reaching out. It's not best practice to do that. It's best practice to be in communication with the candidate. But you're within your right to kind of ask to be notified if you have interviewed.
Great. The last question, and then we're going to end it for today, is about the question in an interview: when people look you up online, what will they see? Is it appropriate, or what kind of response are they looking for?
I don't know. I don't ask this question, but I think it would just be like, again, if you're really into a particular sport or something like that, oh, you're going to see all my rankings from my hockey team, or oh, you're going to see I've been doing all these webinars for PLT Canada, or something like that. I'm not really sure. They're just looking probably for honesty. So if you're not on the internet, then that's fine too. I would say to this, there's another Sarah Casorso that is like some big hockey player, and so you're going to hear about somebody else when you Google my name. I think that's fine. Just answer it professionally and honestly, but I'm not really sure what the intent behind that would be.
I think my guess is that if an interview is using that question, it's just to get into what are your interests, who are you as a person outside of your resume, maybe. So I think that your response is great, as well as just emphasizing the positive things, emphasizing your club's services, experience. I don't think they need to know about your socializing and inappropriate things. So definitely.
And I would leave that off the internet too, because nowadays your pictures are not your pictures anymore, right? So I would just, if you're looking for a job, do be mindful of what you do put out on the internet. Great.
Okay, well, I think we're going to end it there. I'm just writing one more response to a question, but I really do appreciate all of your expertise, Sarah. And Eco Canada has been really amazing through these 4 webinars, and we were really grateful to partner with them on the project. But if you have any questions moving forward, please feel free to reach out to either myself or to Maria. And if you haven't received your certificate within the next couple of weeks and you think you should because you attended all 4, please do let us know and we will make sure you get that. And you're always welcome. I know lots of you have done it, to reach out to LinkedIn, either for Sarah or myself. We don't mind reviewing some things. I know we've reviewed some resumes and helped prepare some people for some interview. And one really interesting story and success before we close off, one participant who did these webinars and learned these tips actually recently got hired by PLT Canada because she put the webinars on her resume and got noticed and interviewed well. And she's now our newest Green Jobs Coordinator. So I wish all of you good luck in your green career pathway, and I hope that we're able to cross paths in some other program or service that PLT Canada and Eco Canada is offering. So thanks so much for participating. Hope you're all well.
Yes, thanks everyone.